Ethan Cole never thought his life would take him beyond Earth. He was a quiet systems engineer from Colorado, the kind of man who liked order, quiet mornings, and the sound of old engines humming under his hands. He lived alone in a small cabin near the mountains, far from crowds or attention. His days were simple. He repaired machines, studied circuits, and sometimes sat by the window watching the stars. When the Galactic Alliance's cultural exchange program started, Ethan applied out of curiosity. The program paired humans with representatives from other planets for a one-year collaboration to share knowledge, language, and customs. It was supposed to build friendship between worlds. Most people joined hoping to meet someone famous or interesting. Ethan joined because he wanted to understand how other species built machines that traveled faster than light. Weeks later, a sealed letter arrived with his pairing assignment. The white envelope bore the Alliance crest printed in blue and gold. Ethan opened it calmly, expecting a standard name, a scientist, maybe a teacher from another colony. But his heart stopped when he read the words inside. Partner assigned, Princess Ryla of Cathera. For a moment he thought it was a mistake. Princess? He muttered to himself. He checked the code twice, but it matched his registration number. Ryla of Cathera was not just any name. She was a warrior princess from a planet known for its proud and fierce people. Rumors said her tribe never bowed to anyone, even in peace meetings. She was known to have fought in real battles before the Alliance was formed. Ethan blinked, speechless. Around him, the other engineers were celebrating their pairings. One had been matched with a gentle healer, another with a musician from Venus Colony. Their laughter filled the room. But Ethan only sat there, holding his letter, wondering how someone as ordinary as him could ever work beside a princess who once led armies. His friend, Mark, leaned over his shoulder. "You're kidding me!" "The warrior princess? The one from the Catheran Empire?" Ethan nodded slowly. "That's what it says," Mark whistled. "You're either the luckiest man alive or the unluckiest. Depends on how much she likes humans." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He searched old files about Catherans, tall, strong, disciplined beings with glowing amber eyes and dark bronze skin. They were known for their pride and sense of honor. Their princess Ryla was said to be the fiercest among them, a woman raised in battle halls, not classrooms. Ethan sighed. They paired her with an engineer, he said to himself. She's going to hate me. Days passed quickly. Soon, he boarded the diplomatic cruiser Aurora, where the partners would meet before heading to their assigned stations. The ship was a marvel of design, white corridors, silver floors, and wide windows showing stars gliding past. Ethan felt small walking among ambassadors, captains, and alien dignitaries. His clothes were plain gray, his badge simple. He found his assigned cabin and waited, trying to calm his nervous hands. The door slid open with a low hum. She entered without a word. Princess Ryla was taller than he expected, her presence commanding even in silence. Her skin had a golden tone that caught the light, and her long dark hair was tied behind her neck. A thin scar ran from her temple down to her jawline, old, healed, but visible. Her eyes, deep amber and sharp, looked straight at him. She wore no crown, no ornaments, just a black uniform with silver lines that marked her rank. "You are Ethan Cole?" she asked, her voice calm but distant. "Yes," he said quickly, standing. "Engineer. Assigned to your team." She nodded once. "I was told humans value punctuality. You were here early." Ethan smiled nervously. "Habit, I guess. I like to be prepared." She didn't smile back. "Good. Then you'll survive this year." She placed her case on the table and began scanning the room. Her movements were graceful but firm, like a soldier inspecting new ground. Ethan tried to keep conversation light. "I've read about Cathera," he said. "Beautiful world. Strong winds, golden deserts, harsh lands make strong people," she interrupted. "Weak ones do not last long there." Her words weren't meant to hurt, but they left him quiet. She sat by the window looking at the stars, her expression unreadable. Ethan could sense that she was not used to calmness. The silence between them grew thick. Later, during the evening briefing, the other pairs gathered in the main hall. Ethan stood beside Ryla as the commander introduced everyone. The humans had friendly, smiling partners, scientists, poets, diplomats. When Ryla's name was called, the room fell almost silent. Everyone had heard stories about her. She stood tall, unbothered by their stares. Ethan noticed how even the officers straightened when she spoke. Her tone was precise, confident, and cold. After the briefing, as they walked back to their cabin, Ethan spoke quietly. "They seem nervous around you." "They should be," she said without looking at him. "I am not here to please them." Her words might have sounded proud, but there was something behind them, something heavy. Ethan wanted to ask more, but he didn't. Instead, he focused on his role. The next morning, they began their first joint task, analyzing the ship's energy system. Ryla observed silently while he worked. When one of the power cells sparked unexpectedly, Ethan quickly disconnected it before it burned through the wires. Ryla's eyes narrowed. "You reacted fast," he shrugged. "Machines talk in small ways. If you listen, they warn you before they break." She tilted her head slightly, studying him as if seeing something new. "You listen to machines?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes they make more sense than people." For the first time, she almost smiled, but just barely. A tiny flicker crossed her face and vanished. "You are a strange human engineer," she said. "Most try to impress me with words. You talk about engines." Ethan chuckled softly. "That's because engines don't argue back." That night, as the ship glided through the deep silence of space, Ethan sat by his window again, watching the stars. Across the room, Ryla stood near the same window, her reflection caught in the glass. For a long moment, neither spoke. Yet something quiet and invisible passed between them, something that said perhaps this partnership, however strange, had a reason. Ethan didn't know it yet. But this fierce alien princess who trusted no one would soon test everything he believed about strength, courage, and connection. And maybe, just maybe, he would be the first human to understand the heart behind those proud golden eyes. Part 2. The First Encounter. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the soft hum of the Aurora's engines. The stars outside his window had faded to the gentle glow of the ship's interior lights. He dressed quickly, knowing the day would be full of orientation sessions and introductions to the ship's systems. But there was a quiet tension in the cabin. Princess Ryla was already awake, standing by the window, her silhouette framed by the stars fading into the horizon. She didn't turn to him. Ethan cleared his throat. "Good morning, Princess Ryla," he said, keeping his tone polite. She glanced at him briefly, her amber eyes sharp and assessing. "Ethan, I do not need greetings. Only competence." He swallowed and smiled lightly. "I can do that. Competence is my specialty." Her expression didn't soften, but she didn't dismiss him either. That in itself felt like a small victory. Their first day together began in the ship's engineering bay, a massive room filled with complex panels, glowing consoles, and machinery that hummed like a living organism. Ryla observed silently as Ethan navigated the systems, checking readings, adjusting settings, and troubleshooting minor errors. Her stance was upright, commanding, and somehow intimidating, but Ethan felt strangely calm. He had spent years fixing machines that didn't respond to anger or pressure. Patience had become his tool, and now it was his only weapon in winning her respect. "You approach the core incorrectly," Ryla said suddenly, her voice firm. "Your method exposes the circuits to potential overload." Ethan paused, studying her gesture. She moved closer, pointing at a panel with precise finger movements. "Show me a better way," he said calmly. For the first time, Ryla allowed herself to step beside him. Her hands moved with swift precision, her knowledge of machinery, though alien in design, mirroring his own approach. Together they adjusted the panels and the hum of the system stabilized. "Not bad," she admitted finally. It was the closest she had come to praise. Ethan nodded, hiding a small smile. By afternoon they moved to the ship's training deck. The Alliance required all participants to engage in basic survival exercises, both physical and strategic. Ethan, who had avoided sports most of his life, felt uneasy as he watched Ryla move with the grace and confidence of a warrior. Other human partners struggled to match her pace, but Ethan stayed calm, focusing on observation rather than competition. During one exercise, a simulation of an emergency scenario, the room filled with alarms, flashing red lights and warnings. Teams were expected to respond quickly and efficiently. Panic spread through the human crew. Ethan's hands moved over the control panel steadily, rerouting power and stabilizing systems. Ryla noticed his focus and, instead of commanding others, came directly to his side. "You handle these calmly," she said, her voice quiet, almost curious. "I have to," he replied. "Chaos does not fix itself. Machines tell you what to do if you listen. Ryla watched him, studying his hands on the controls. She had faced armies, negotiated with hostile tribes, and survived battles where one wrong step meant death. Yet here was this quiet human, calmly navigating a storm of lights and alarms. For the first time, she felt a flicker of respect for someone who did not wield strength in the obvious way. By evening, the exercises ended, and the crew gathered in the ship's common area. Most humans exchange stories about their partners, how they laughed, argued, or surprised them. Ethan remained silent, observing. Ryla sat across from him, her eyes scanning the room, her posture alert. Unlike the others, she did not mingle. She did not seek approval or attention. She was a princess, but she was alone in her own way. Ethan approached her slowly. "You don't talk much with the others," he said softly. She looked at him, one eyebrow raised. "Why should I? They do not understand me, and I do not have time for pleasantries." He nodded. "I understand. You are focused. That is good, but it is also okay to let someone see who you are, even a little." Her amber eyes held his gaze, and for a moment, the silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Then she gave a tiny nod, almost imperceptible. Ethan knew it was the closest thing to agreement she could give. The next day brought an unexpected challenge. A minor malfunction in the ship's coolant system threatened to slow operations. Engineers scrambled, but no one could pinpoint the problem quickly. Ethan moved calmly, scanning the readings while Ryla watched him closely. When he traced the fault to a faulty valve, he realized he would have to repair it in the narrow maintenance shafts. "You are going into the shafts alone?" she asked, her voice sharper than usual. "I can manage," he said confidently. She studied him for a moment, then followed silently. The shafts were tight, with pipes running along every wall. Ethan crawled carefully, tools in hand, and began adjusting the valve. Ryla stayed behind him, her presence quiet but steady, ready to assist if needed. A small spark flew from a loose wire. Without hesitation, Ryla moved quickly, grounding the circuit and stabilizing the system. Ethan looked at her, impressed. "Thank you," he said simply. She shrugged. "It is expected. You would do the same." That night, back in their cabin, the tension between them had shifted. It was not friendship, not yet, but there was recognition, an understanding that each respected the other's abilities. Ethan cleaned his tools quietly while Ryla sat nearby, watching the stars outside. "You are patient," she said eventually. "Most humans would panic in a situation like today." "I am not most humans," he replied softly, his hands still moving. "I focus on what I can control. Fear changes nothing." For a moment, Ryla was silent. Then, almost to herself, she said, "Perhaps. There is more to you than I first believed." Ethan looked up, smiling faintly. "And perhaps you are not as untouchable as everyone says." Ryla's lips twitched, almost a smile. She looked away, her gaze returning to the distant stars. "Do not mistake my attention for kindness," she said quietly. But Ethan sensed the hint of warmth behind her words. For the first time, he felt that the partnership was not just about duty or assignment. It was about learning to understand each other, across worlds, across differences. And though he did not yet know it, the quiet respect they had begun to build that day would become the foundation for something much deeper. As the Aurora sailed through the endless night of space, the quiet engineer and the fierce alien princess shared a rare moment of stillness. It was a beginning, fragile and uncertain, but alive with promise. Life aboard the Aurora began to settle into a rhythm. But Ethan and Ryla's differences were impossible to ignore. Where Ethan was quiet, careful, and methodical, Ryla was bold, decisive, and unafraid to challenge authority. Every task seemed to become a test, not of skill, but of patience and understanding. The next assignment involved the ship's navigation system. A new sector of the galaxy was being charted, and the team had to analyze the coordinates, determine safe paths, and identify potential hazards. Ethan approached the task with calm precision, reviewing readings and running simulations. Ryla, on the other hand, preferred to act quickly, trusting instinct and experience from her planet's dangerous terrains. "You cannot rush this," Ethan said, frowning at her rapid adjustments to the coordinates. "I do not need to calculate every step," Ryla replied sharply. "Some things must be decided in the moment. Hesitation leads to failure." Ethan shook his head. "Failure also comes from ignoring data. Plans keep people safe." Their voices rose slightly, attracting curious glances from nearby crew members. Most humans avoided confronting Ryla, but Ethan didn't back down. He had learned that fear achieved nothing. Ryla's sharp amber eyes studied him intently. She was used to people following her commands without question, but here was someone who disagreed, not out of arrogance, but because he believed in his own judgment. The argument ended when an alert flashed across the navigation panel. A cluster of asteroids had moved into the planned path. Ethan quickly recalculated the course, accounting for their movement, while Ryla suggested a more direct but risky path. "Your path is safe," she admitted grudgingly. "Mine would have required luck." "Luck doesn't protect people," Ethan said. "Precision does." For a moment neither spoke. The silence was not tense, it was reflective. Ryla was considering his words more seriously than she let on, and Ethan noticed the way her jaw tightened as she stared at the screen. Later, during a break, Ethan found Ryla standing alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. He approached slowly. "You seem frustrated," he said quietly. "I am not frustrated," she replied, her tone flat. "I am evaluating you." "Evaluating me?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "You think too much," she said. "On Cathera, action matters more than thought. Waiting can cost lives." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes thought saves lives. You saw it earlier with the navigation. Your path could have been dangerous." Ryla studied him in silence, and for the first time her sharp expression softened. "You are strange, human. You do not act quickly, but somehow you avoid mistakes." Ethan shrugged. "I listen, I watch, and I learn from what the situation tells me." That evening, the crew gathered for a simulation exercise, a practice in handling unexpected emergencies aboard the ship. The lights dimmed, alarms blared, and virtual obstacles appeared on the display screens. Most humans panicked, their fingers fumbling over controls. Ethan remained calm, guiding the systems, stabilizing power, and monitoring environmental levels. Ryla, initially critical, joined him on the control console. Together they managed the scenario efficiently. She followed his careful instructions, sometimes taking initiative where he hesitated, and he adjusted his methods to include her instincts. They worked like a team, blending caution with decisiveness. By the end, even the instructors noticed the unusual cooperation between the quiet human and the fierce princess. After the exercise, the two walked back to their cabin in silence. Ethan carried the tools he had used, and Ryla adjusted the strap of her utility belt. Finally, she spoke. "You handle stress well," she said, almost casually. "I handle it better when I know what I can control," Ethan replied. "You do not always control your environment, but you control your actions. That is impressive." Ryla's amber eyes met his, and for a moment neither spoke. The tension from earlier had softened into something different, a quiet understanding, subtle but undeniable. The next few days were filled with smaller tasks, each highlighting their contrasting approaches. While Ethan meticulously documented the ship's energy systems, Ryla reorganized the workstations with efficiency in mind. She often questioned his slow methods, and he occasionally disagreed, defending his need for accuracy. Arguments arose, but so did moments of collaboration. One afternoon, a minor emergency occurred in the hydroponics bay. A valve leaked, threatening the delicate plants that provided fresh air and food. Ethan rushed to fix it, but the narrow space made it difficult. Ryla appeared without warning, her hand steady as she helped him maneuver the tools and stabilize the system. "You are not entirely helpless," she said, almost teasing. Ethan smiled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Neither are you entirely impossible to work with." For the first time she laughed, a short, sharp sound that startled him. It was not loud, but it was real, unguarded. Ethan realized that beneath her disciplined exterior, there was a side that could be gentle, curious, and even playful. That night, as they returned to their cabin, Ryla spoke quietly. "You are persistent." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Persistent? In a good way or a bad way?" "In a way I do not understand," she admitted. "Most humans either fear me or try to impress me. You do neither. You simply exist and do your work." "It is strange," Ethan chuckled. "I think that makes me ordinary. But perhaps ordinary is exactly what you need." Ryla looked out the window again, her expression unreadable. The stars shimmered across the vast emptiness of space. "Perhaps," she murmured. "Or perhaps I simply have no choice but to accept the ordinary." Ethan studied her for a moment, sensing the layers behind her words. She was proud, fierce, and unyielding, but also curious and searching. She had faced battles, dangers, and challenges far beyond what most humans could imagine, and yet, she had chosen to trust him even in small ways by working alongside him and acknowledging his decisions. As he prepared for sleep, Ethan felt a strange mixture of anticipation and calm. The partnership was far from easy. Their worlds were different, their experiences contrasting, and their personalities clashing. Yet in every argument, in every shared task, there was a growing recognition of each other's strengths. Ethan realized that this year would be unlike any other. He was not just paired with an alien princess. He was paired with someone who could teach him about courage, resilience, and loyalty. And perhaps if he listened carefully, he could teach her something too, not about strategy or battle, but about patience, understanding, and trust. For now, though, the night was quiet. The Aurora sailed on through the endless galaxy, carrying a human engineer and a fierce alien princess who were slowly learning to navigate not just the stars, but each other. The Aurora had been gliding smoothly through the outer sectors for several weeks. Ethan and Ryla had begun to find a rhythm, though it was fragile, built on patience, respect, and mutual understanding. They completed daily tasks together, debated strategies, and occasionally laughed quietly when one of Ryla's sharp remarks caught Ethan off guard. Yet beneath the calm, the galaxy always had surprises in store. It began as a subtle warning, a flicker in the ship's main energy grid. Small lights blinked on panels and a low hum echoed through the corridors. Ethan noticed it first. "Ryla, check the core diagnostics," he said. "Something isn't right." She leaned over the console, her amber eyes narrowing. "Power fluctuations. They are growing faster than expected." Ethan's hands moved quickly, tracing the conduits, checking the readings. "It could overload the engines if we don't stabilize it now." Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the corridors, echoing loudly through the ship. Crew members shouted, rushing to their stations. The ship tilted slightly, throwing loose equipment to the floor. The Aurora had encountered a minor asteroid field, one that had shifted unpredictably. If the energy core failed, sections of the ship could shut down and life support systems might collapse. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he did not panic. "We need to secure the energy core and stabilize the navigation," he shouted to the nearby engineers. Ryla stood beside him, her presence calm but commanding. She directed the crew with short, clear instructions, ensuring no one panicked. "You handle the core," she said. "I'll coordinate the safety protocols. Do not stop moving." Ethan nodded. "Agreed." He entered the maintenance bay where the core's conduits hummed loudly, threatening to spark. He adjusted valves, rerouted power, and worked to prevent overload. Sparks flew, and the floor trembled slightly beneath him. He could feel the tension in the air, but he stayed focused. Behind him, Ryla moved with precision. She monitored the systems, guided other crew members, and ensured the sections near the core remained safe. She shouted warnings when someone strayed too close to a live panel. Ethan noticed her hands, steady, firm, yet careful when she touched the machinery. It struck him how different her training was from his own, yet how perfectly their skills complemented each other. A sudden jolt threw Ethan against the wall. A panel had sparked unexpectedly, sending smoke into the bay. He coughed, brushing his hair from his eyes. Ryla was there instantly, guiding him to a safe corner and stabilizing the panel with a quick adjustment. "Focus on the conduits," she said firmly. "I've got this side." Ethan nodded, grateful for her help. Together they worked in harmony, the hum of the core almost like a living thing they were carefully taming. Minutes felt like hours. Sweat dripped from Ethan's forehead, but he ignored it, following his steps precisely. Every movement mattered. Outside the bay, crew members moved efficiently under Ryla's guidance. No one panicked, no one froze. Finally, with a series of adjustments, the energy core stabilized. The hum softened, lights returned to normal, and the trembling stopped. Ethan leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Ryla approached him, her expression unreadable. "You did well," she said quietly. Her voice lacked its usual sharpness. Ethan smiled faintly. "We did well. You guided the crew perfectly." For a moment, neither spoke. The danger had passed, but the intensity of the situation had created something rare, a shared understanding that went beyond orders or titles. They had faced a real challenge together, and both had relied on the other. Later that night, after the ship settled into quiet orbit, Ethan and Ryla returned to their cabin. They sat on opposite sides, still catching their breath. "You are stronger than I imagined," Ryla admitted finally. "Not in the way I expected, but in a way that matters more." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "Stronger? I just followed procedures." "Procedures saved lives today," she said softly. "Most humans would have panicked. You did not. That is strength." Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth he had not expected. "And you," he said gently, "handled everyone with calm precision. You didn't let fear control you even when things got dangerous." Ryla's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Perhaps we both learned something about each other today." The weeks that followed the crisis changed the nature of their partnership. They began to work more closely, coordinating decisions before executing them. Ryla learned to respect Ethan's patience and careful thinking, while Ethan learned to trust Ryla's instincts and confidence. Their arguments became shorter, less heated, and often ended in compromise. One afternoon, as they repaired minor systems together, Ryla paused and observed Ethan quietly. "You never raise your voice even when things go wrong," she said. Ethan shrugged. "Raising my voice changes nothing. Calm thinking solves problems." She tilted her head. "Most people do not understand that. I did not understand it before today. You understand it now?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her gaze drifted to the stars outside the window. "Yes, and I respect it." That evening they walked along the observation deck, the galaxy stretching endlessly before them. Ethan broke the silence. "You're not so different from us after all. You just see the world in a different way." Ryla smiled faintly, a rare and fleeting expression. "And you humans see strength where most see weakness, that is, unusual." For the first time, the quiet engineer and the fierce alien princess felt a sense of camaraderie that went beyond duty. They were no longer just assigned partners. They were a team, capable of facing dangers together and learning from each other. As the Aurora sailed through the endless darkness of space, both felt a subtle change. Fear had been replaced by trust. Tension had been replaced by respect. And somewhere between the hum of the engines and the stars outside, a quiet bond began to form, one that neither had expected, but both had come to rely upon. That night, Ethan looked at Ryla as she stood by the window, her reflection merging with the starlight. "You fought fear today," he said quietly. "And you fought chaos," she replied, her voice calm but warm. "Together we survived." Ethan realized that this partnership, once daunting and unpredictable, had become something extraordinary. They were no longer just human and alien. They were allies, learning to navigate not just the stars but each other's worlds. And though challenges would continue to come, he now knew that neither would face them alone. Weeks turned into months aboard the Aurora, and the once tense partnership between Ethan and Princess Ryla had transformed into a quiet, unspoken understanding. They still had their differences. Ethan's calm patience often contrasted with Ryla's decisive boldness, but now, each recognized the value in the other's approach. Where she acted quickly, he calculated. Where he hesitated, she acted. Together, they became a balance neither had anticipated. It was during a routine maintenance check in the ship's engine bay that Ethan first noticed the subtle changes in Ryla. She moved with her usual precision, but her expressions had softened. She asked questions, not commands, about the systems. She lingered a little longer near him when he explained repairs, and occasionally, a flicker of amusement crossed her face when he made a quiet joke about machine quirks. "You notice things others miss," she said one day as they worked together on a stubborn panel. "I notice what matters," he replied. "Machines do not lie. People sometimes do. But the truth always shows itself if you listen carefully." Ryla studied him, her amber eyes thoughtful. "You speak as if patience is a strength. I never thought of it that way." Ethan smiled faintly. "It is, sometimes more than bravery or speed. Strength has many forms." The ship's crew noticed the subtle shift as well. Other humans who had been wary of her now spoke with ease when she was near Ethan. Alien delegates treated her with respect, but they also seemed less tense, sensing the quiet influence he had on her calm demeanor. It was clear, even to the most casual observer, that something unusual was unfolding. One evening, as the Aurora drifted through a serene star cluster, Ethan and Ryla stood side by side on the observation deck. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, stars shimmering like scattered gems. Ryla leaned slightly against the railing, her usual sharp posture relaxed. You know, Ethan said softly, I never expected to enjoy this assignment. Ryla glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. Enjoy? You mean surviving a year with me? He laughed quietly. Surviving is part of it. But more than that, I never expected to learn so much from someone so different from me. Her gaze returned to the stars. You are not like other humans, she admitted. Most would have been intimidated by my presence. You adapted. You listened. Ethan hesitated, unsure of how to express the truth. I respected you, Princess. From the beginning. Even when I didn't understand everything about you, I wanted to understand you. For a long moment, there was silence between them. The hum of the ship and the distant twinkle of stars filled the space. Then, Ryla finally spoke, her voice softer than Ethan had ever heard it. And I wanted to understand you too. Quiet human. You are not ordinary at all. A small smile crossed Ethan's face. I suppose we both had misconceptions. I thought you would be impossible to approach, and you thought I would be weak. Perhaps, Ryla said, her voice almost playful. But together we proved we were stronger than we seemed. The next day they were informed that their mission aboard the Aurora was coming to an end. They would soon return to their respective worlds, and the cultural exchange program would assess their reports. Ethan felt a mix of relief and sadness. He had come to appreciate the quiet comfort of Ryla's presence, her sharp insights, and her occasional flashes of humor. The thought of parting was heavier than he expected. Ryla, too, seemed affected. She remained unusually silent during the debriefing sessions, watching him from across the room. After the final session, she approached him privately. Ethan, she began, her tone serious but gentle. The program ends, but I have requested an extension of 1 year on Earth. Ethan blinked in surprise. You'd requested to stay here? Why? She hesitated for a moment. Because I want to continue learning. About humans. About you. Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest. I didn't expect that, he said softly. But I'm glad. I don't think I could have returned to my cabin without seeing you again. Ryla's amber eyes softened. You have taught me patience. You have taught me that strength is not only measured by action but by understanding. I wish to continue learning that lesson. For the first time, she allowed a small smile, real and unguarded. Ethan felt a quiet thrill, knowing that beneath her proud and disciplined exterior there was genuine trust and even friendship. Perhaps more. Over the following months, they worked together in harmony. Ethan introduced her to Earth's simple pleasures, walking among forests, observing mountains, and enjoying quiet evenings under the stars. Ryla, in turn, shared stories of Cathera's culture, its history, and her experiences growing up in a world where honor and courage shaped every decision. They laughed together, debated ideas, and quietly relied on each other in ways words could not always express. Neighbors and colleagues noticed the closeness forming between them. Ryla's pride remained intact, but her interactions had softened, influenced by Ethan's calm and steady demeanor. Ethan, too, had grown, not just in skill, but in confidence, patience, and understanding of the wider universe. One evening, as snow began to fall softly outside the Colorado cabin, Ethan and Ryla stood together, watching the flakes settle on the mountains. You've changed me, she said quietly. Ethan glanced at her. I could say the same. You've shown me courage I never knew I had, and wisdom I never expected. Ryla smiled faintly, her hand brushing against his. I suppose. We are not so ordinary after all. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. No, not ordinary. Never ordinary. For the first time, the boundaries of human and alien seemed less important than the bond they had forged. Through patience, trust, respect, and shared experiences, a quiet connection had grown, one that transcended worlds, languages, and expectations. As the evening continued, they stood together side by side looking out at the stars. The Aurora had carried them through dangers, challenges, and differences, and now it had brought them to understanding, companionship, and perhaps something more. Ethan realized that life was unpredictable. Partners were assigned, roles were set, and expectations existed. Yet sometimes the unexpected pairing, the one that seemed impossible, was the one that changed everything. Princess Ryla, fierce and proud, had found someone who listened. Ethan, quiet and ordinary by his own estimation, had found someone extraordinary, and together, they had discovered that true strength lay not just in courage or skill, but in trust, understanding, and the willingness to walk beside each other through the unknown. And as the snow fell quietly outside the cabin, two beings from different worlds, one human, one Catharan, stood together, facing the future with a bond that no distance, no challenge, and no expectation could ever break. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. But for Ethan and Ryla, it was also full of possibility, friendship, and a quiet kind of love that did not need words to be understood.